Alright, now that we have the hair and everything all done with the skin, now let's get started on the clothing. Now let's first get started on coloring in the undershirt here. So this would be kind of like a, kind of like a dark, I wouldn't say black, completely black. I would say just more like a dark black or dark warm, a dark cool black. So what I mean by that is not just pure black, but black with some blue in it, or with some blue hues on it, maybe a little bit of pink, but we'll see. Maybe probably more of a pinkish tone, just because I don't like things when it's like pure black, except for maybe, some graphic areas. Pure black is a very bold statement, so I only like to reserve bold statements for when I really need it. For instance, like the cattail and the ears and, where the eyes are. So in order to make sure that it looks more balanced, I just like to use a sort of a lighter version of it. So let's first start off with coloring in some of our dark colors, right? Let's do that. So I'm going to start off with a dark brown here. This is a warmer tone. And the reason why I start off with dark brown is because that's, once again, a base color. So I think I'm going to go for more of a warm black. So this looks pretty close to black right now. But this is a dark brown. So I'm just going to color this very, very lightly, as always. Avoiding, avoiding these lines here. So be careful about that. I like to, leave these ones for last because in case if I color these first, then, when I, color it like this, then the color will be kind of ruined. So I like to color the inner parts first, so it, saves me some heartache. Once again, we're just going to, color over this. Make sure you keep it pretty consistent with the pressure and keep it consistent with the marking so that they don't look weird. So you want to go over it again, just to kind of smooth the marks out. So make sure that your grain is pretty even. So it's not, not very like liney, it's just more smooth in texture. This can also be done by, using multiple stroke directions. So if you go for a more hatch-like look, cross-hatching, the grains start becoming less and less apparent. So I'm not going to color in the bow just yet because I don't want to taint it yet. So I'm going to go ahead and just continue coloring. Make sure that there's nothing underneath your paper, because when you color, rough areas or big areas like this, and you suddenly feel a bump, or you have like eraser shavings underneath your paper, those eraser shavings will start coming through to the in your coloring. So make sure that everything underneath your paper is clear of debris and smooth. In fact, I know that a lot of people in my class when I was back at Art Center, what they did was they put a lot of paper underneath so that it's the smoothest, possible. However, we don't really need to do that because, we're not, it's not really that big of a deal, especially if you're just doing Crayola and just doing illustration like this. If you want a smoother texture, you would probably use some, padding underneath just in case. But, this paper is already quite grainy, so you don't really need to worry about that too much anyway. You'll still see the grain. But as I said earlier, you won't see as much grain if you layer, but two, if you draw bigger. So that's just, another tip. So here is our dark brown. Now let's add some purple to it. So I'm going to be using my orchid. I'm going to lightly glaze over. I'm just going to lightly, color over as I did with the gray, or no, as I did with the what's it called? The dark brown. So this is just giving once again, a kind of a more different color. It's just giving an added touch of color to it. It's not making it, well, it makes it a little bit darker because I'm adding more value to this, but it's not going to be pure black because pure black is boring, right? Except for maybe in clothing, but but I like, adding a bit of tint to my clothing, or a little bit of bits of tint to my colors, because that just is more visually interesting. I'm not going to go overboard. I'm just going to go a little bit. Okay, so once we have that ready, still pretty grainy, but getting there. Now let's add a little bit of our violet or a blue, just to kind of have a blue hue in this. It's going to be mainly a warm or kind of like a purplish violet. It's going to be mostly a purplish and violet tone here, but it's nice to add some blues in here in the mix. We're going to use black as our darkest value. So once again, kind of keep out the keep the grain out. And also another thing is the darker your colors are, the more grain will show because it's really, really powerful and dark. So now let's go ahead and add some darks. So let's add some black. So I like to add black in areas like the seams, intense black in like the seams, because that's a shadow. That's places where there's like some shadow in there. And then I'm going to add, I'm going to draw in my shadows here. So as you can see, I, drew in my shadows based on where my line work was. And I'm going to also shade in areas, like the folds. I want to keep the upper parts of the fold lighter and bottom parts of the fold darker so that shows more depth. So if you remember how to render ribbons, that's how you do it. Let's also add some more folds around the seam lines here. And now let's kind of paint, color over on top once again with our black just to kind of solidify the darkness of her shirt. If you want, you can press even harder to show even more darks, if it wasn't enough. And let's just do the same thing on the other side. This will be more in darkness because it's, the arm is covering the area, so I'm just going to cover this in darkness here, in shadow. Now this would be a little bit tricky because she has folds kind of going across, and you have this ribbon. So I would say shade in areas where the hair is resting, where a clavicle is. Don't worry about the hair too much because the hair is already colored, and besides the color of the hair is already pretty powerful, so black won't affect it as much. I'm also going to add a little bit of some shading around the breast area here because that is still is physics. We can still see that area just a little bit where it bends and where it creases. Now I'm going to draw some creases in here. See how it stretches across. And then let's go ahead and add some value around the edges of the clothing here. Usually the edge also casts a little bit of a shadow, so I do that. Now once again, let's go ahead and shade this all in with our black, so just to make it, our final pass. There we have the shirt. I'm going to darken some of these areas here, such as where the ribbon is. Careful, don't miscolor. I'm going to color in these areas here, one here. Notice how these folds are more stretched out, so they're not, crinkled like this. They're more, going back and forth because, it's stretching across her chest. So I want to emphasize that. So that looks good. I think that looks pretty good. So now let's go ahead and work on some more, just a little bit more tints. I'm just going to add a little bit more blues here. I'm also going to add a little bit of my purple once again, just to kind of reinforce that tone and also kind of fill in all the other, white spots in there. Looks pretty good. Now this might need a little bit of blending, so I'm going to use my white. Actually, I don't think I'm going to use my white. Let me see if I can use a paper towel. Paper towel right here. I'm going to smudge it. So this is probably a rare time you'll see me smudge, so I'm just going to go ahead and test this here. So you can see, rather than using my hand, I am using this napkin because it's easier to smudge that way. But I'm only smudging a little bit here. I'm not going to see. That's what happens if you smudge. The color will kind of start, tainting everything else. So I should not have done that. I wonder if I could use my kneaded eraser for this. I think I could. So let's see. Let's test. Let's put you to the test. Yep, we could use a kneaded eraser for this. So that is a good thing. Use a kneaded eraser if you have a smudge problem. Let's add a little bit of white to this, just to kind of make it more opaque. And be careful when you use white on dark, because look at the lid here, it's gotten a little bit dark. Okay, but anyways, enough of that. I'm going to add my darkest dark now, and that is going to be done using my pen. So I'm going to be using a brush pen for this. Now this is just a rare occasion, you don't have to do this, but I'm only going to do that for, the darker darks here. Just to kind of, you can still see where it is. So I'm going to be putting in areas, underneath the chain link here. Areas where it's in shadow. Just kind of reinforce my shadows here. Now I won't suggest that you guys go overboard with this. Just kind of just do enough that the job is done. Like if you can see the shadows nicely, then don't overdo it. Because I know a lot of people when they want to, when they use a new tool, they try to overdo it and try to do it with everything that they do, and it becomes a little bit challenging to really see everything else. There. So that's enough for the. Actually, let me add a little bit more towards the shirt here because I want to emphasize that area. Now if I make a mistake, then it's oh well, whatever. I kind of treat it like that, especially when it comes to traditional. It's like if you make a mistake, then you make a mistake. You just learn next time. But I'm going a little bit more careful. Same here. I'm going to add a little bit more of a shadow. Where the hair is. So you can see, very delicate process, but worth it. There. I think that should be good enough. Yeah. Actually, I'm going to add one more line here, just to kind of show that, that's another shadow here. There, I'm done. I'm done with this because I don't want to mess it up any further. Alright, so that is the undershirt. Let me know what you guys think. Hopefully that this helped a bunch, and I will see you guys in the next one. We will be working on the corset part and also the bow area. Anyways, I'll see you guys in the next one. Bye-bye.